to Comic Talkers, where comics are always the top of our discussion. I'm Mary,
And I'm Brandon.
and we are continuing to go over our 52 book club. We are now on week 25. We are almost halfway through. Um, Seriously, we say every week, if you're not caught up, what are you doing here? Why? We have it all laid out for you. Please go look. But we're gonna move on and push through to get through issue 25 today. And we open with a character we've never seen in 52 before.
Yes.
And we're looking at Bruno Mannheim, who, as we're going to learn, is very involved in some of the plots that we've been looking at through 52. Um, and we see him kind of looking at like this bastardized version of like the Ten Commandments. He's going through this list: thou shalt steal, thou shalt kill, thou shalt bear false witness. Um, we see him talking to Mirage. He says, "You think small scale men like you, for me, crime is the moral standard, the universal principle, the natural successor to free market consumer capitalism. I'm looking to establish a new world order of crime with its own capital city. Every Caesar needs a Rome. I'm taking Gotham." Which, it makes sense. Uh, Says, "If you're as smart as you say, you'll step out of my way and tell the other bosses to do the same. I'm making this easy. You affiliate with Intergang or you die. You swear on the crime Bible," which Brandon talked about, "or you die." He's like, "The what? What are you talking about, Mannheim?" Says, "Cain used that stone to commit the first murder when he battered his brother Abel to death. It's like a stone book, very artsy. Is that blood?" And then we see Mannheim just smash Mirage's faces into the crime Bible. Says, "Those are your brains trickling onto the carpet, smart guy. Guess they weren't worth a crap in the end." And they bring him down to the kitchens, and he says, "5 years ago, Bruno had an experience, a close encounter with forces from beyond human comprehension." And we see him sort of using what looks like it might be part of Mirage's costume to like wipe his face,
Uh-huh.
and says, "Building an empire is hungry work." Um, a dark angel made of living granite placed its stinking, smoking hand against his chest and held it there as it whispered to him the sickening secrets of the dark side. Held it there until the heart within was blackened and shriveled beyond with repair. And when the Intergang was crime's answer to Interpol, they grew and grew, and now they're running the ultimate globally organized crime network. Says, "You Gotham bosses work for me, or we make you extinct and wipe your names from public record. Like you never even existed." He became an apostle of evil, an evangelist of crime.
Out of all these Gotham crime lords, you see Kite Man.
I know. Like, of everyone, Kite Man?
But he's one of them that's dead because it's like he says, either you join me or you're going to be, this is going to be you. You see
And
Scarface.
we also see Bruno sort of commanding the ones that are still alive. He says, "Now eat, enjoy the meat." He's essentially forcing them to cannibalize the other crime lords that are now dead. But then he says, "Gotham City belongs to me."
That's what I found so weird was out of all crime bosses you could have within Gotham, which we know there's tons of great ones. You go with Kite Man. You go with
Also, like the way that they didn't pick any of the ones that are like super recognizable,
yeah, like I understand.
aside from Kite Man.
Yeah, like some of them, like okay, yeah, you got to understand. Like in that case, yeah, these are going to be the ones you can manipulate, but they don't own much. Like Scarface is probably one of the only ones there that actually owns a lot, and even then, it's debatable. So
Yeah, like it's a big why.
now,
It makes you wonder how competent Intergang actually is.
but we go to day 3, and we turn to Boston, a city we haven't been to yet. And with a villain we have not seen yet, because this is kind of one of the stupid settings for him as well, Sabbac. Now, Sabbac, if anybody does not know, is a Justice Society villain, but not only that, he is more of a Black Adam villain. He's been, if you've watched, I guess a good way to put this, if you guys have sat there and have watched the Black Adam movie, he is the main villain. He is the villain that the Justice Society and Black Adam go up against. But yeah, the point is, he's pretty much this giant demon. And in this comic, going to try to feed on the souls of the innocents. And he's a giant form while these kids run away in costumes, scared out of their mind. Now,
it's Halloween.
but we do see a familiar face, Mr. Freddie Freeman, as he's thrown down to the ground. Now, we also see somebody different, which I'm going to ask Mary to see if she spotted the difference between when we first saw her compared to now. It's with her.
Oh, you're talking about Mary.
Yes, we are. Mary is in the next panel, but she's wearing her white suit compared to her red suit. So we see her come to the aid of Freddie. And of course, Freddie's asking, "Where's Billy?" And Mary reminds him it's Halloween. Do you know how many extra dimensional planes are crossing over into ours tonight? Man, and of course Freddie goes, "Man, he never hangs out with us anymore. That's because you're always complaining. And you're always making excuses for him, Mary." And Mary goes in, of course, there's this group of kids dressed up like it's Black Lightning, Wonder Woman, Flash, and Shazam. Goes in as Sabbac tries to close in his hand to mush these little kids, but Mary Marvel saves the day. Actually, wait a minute, it's not Mary Marvel, my apologies. It's Isis. Now, and as Isis does this, she goes, "As they say in America, Sabbac, trick or treat." And we see Osiris come into play. We see Black Adam come into play. And Freddie and Mary notice this is the Black Marvel family. And they all 3 of them work together to take out Sabbac. Now, of course, Adam takes this as a teaching lesson for Osiris to learn his powers. Of course, Osiris wants to learn how to use the magic ability or the lightning ability. Of course, Adam caves in, allows him to do it. And Freddie and Mary are just going, should we help them? And Mary kind of goes, I don't think they need it. And of course, the Sabbac is still trying to fight off them, but of course, he's unsuccessful as Adam and Osiris take him down. Now, what I love is you have Osiris go, "Happy Halloween, Judeo-Christians."
Which is so funny to me because there really isn't such a thing as Judeo-Christian because Jewish tradition and Christian tradition are so separated that there isn't a lot of overlap.
Right.
It's not even a thing.
Now, you see these kids memorize or want to be Black Adam or be Isis or anything like that. But Freddie and Mary start to question things, including Mary saying, "So who the heck is that Black Adam Jr. kid?" And Freddie goes, "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." Now, we turn to a character we have not seen in weeks.
So we're back with Ralph Dibny. And we actually get a close-up shot of his ring finger. And it looks not quite the same as it used to, the ring on his finger. It looks a little more gnarled, a little more jagged around the edges. It's not quite the wedding band that, we've grown accustomed to seeing highlighted on Ralph's fingers. We have no idea really how long Ralph has been in this other plane of existence. And we are really starting to see that what he's doing is he's looking at the people who have been scarred by the arts arcana. He says it, and we see that the helmet says, "I want you to see a familiar face." looking at Count Mauritius of Agincourt, an eternal prisoner of his own vanity. And then Bosedra, Empress of the Calyx Nebula. She abused magic in order to divide a rival empire. And then the third one is Felix Faust, the sorcerer who fought the Justice League. And I'm going to kind of share all of this long story about Felix Faust because it is so important. Um, they first met him not long after I became the elongated man. I hadn't joined the team yet, but I ran against him plenty once I did. Haven't seen him in I don't know how long though. Guess this explains why. Faust was always thirsting for knowledge, constantly trying to cash in his immortal soul for magic secrets. And the helmet says not trying, succeeding after a fashion. Faust was caught in an addict's cycle. He sold his soul away many times over the years to demon after demon. Then, after each and every defeat, he bargained it back, always forced to pay far more for it than he'd gained through its sale. Always ending up worse off than he'd started. Ultimately, like any precious item passed around too freely, Faust's soul lost its value. He could find no takers. No one was interested in merchandise that worn and tarnished. Faust was down to his last buyer, the demon Neron. It was rumored would trade power unimaginable for a soul pure and strong. Faust no longer owned such a thing if he ever had. So he went harvesting. And we see a panel of Faust holding a knife, going after what looks like a small homeless child. Faust, maddened by need and longing, convinced himself that Neron wouldn't question the source of Faust's trade. And he didn't. He knew full well where it had come from. You cheated me, Neron spat. You misrepresented your bargain. Faust, pathetic to the end, pled ignorance of the rules of magic. Spare me, he pleaded. I have no interest in dealing with you, Neron replied. I will, however, honor the intended trade with the soul's rightful owner. Let her show you what happens to magicians who renege. We discover that it's Neron's soul that is trapped here in this other dimension. And Ralph says, point made, okay, this is what happens to suckers who think they can beat the devil. I get it. I've had enough show and tell, Fate. Are you going to help me get my wife back or not? Say, our next stop puts us back in the land of the living, where you will make your first bargain. Be prepared to honor it. If you end up here, I promise you that no one will mourn for you. Ever. And this takes us to a bank heist in New York City.
So, of course, we find out this is the characters Icicle and Tigris. And they're out to, of course, like Mary says, out for bank robbery, but they're stopped by Infinity. Now, you might not think this is an important part of the story, but this is really like the first time you've really seen them make an appearance since everything happened in week 21.
We do also see Icicle Jr. being one of the offered allies to Al Rothstein in the previous issue.
Yes. Now, the fact being that in week 21, if you don't remember what happened, Eliza Harmon, or Trajectory, was killed. The powers were zapped away and was killed by the new Blockbuster. Now, why is this scene so important? It's because we find out there is a new member of the team. Her name is Matrix. And at this point in time, the way the panels have shown is that Tigris and Icicle Jr. are pretty much back to back as these heroes come in and surround. And pretty much they're trying to tell them to give up. And the fact being that that isn't going to happen to these guys. And of course, they try to make fun of Starlight, which is Natasha, saying that, oh, they think we're going to just give up. We're not. Good luck. And she goes, well, I knew you guys weren't going to do it. So she calls Matrix. Matrix appears right behind both these villains and takes them out by smashing their heads together. Not killing them, but knocking them out. And of course, she announces, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Infinity Inc. Have a happy Halloween. But this is an interesting scene because we see somebody we haven't seen since week 5.
Yes. And so we are back with Alan Scott, who it took me a second to remember that he had an eye patch now. It took me a second to remember that this was Alan. So if we go all the way back to week 5, check out that video to catch up if you forgot, like I did. But Alan Scott was seriously injured in the interdimensional incident caused by the crisis that started the 52 event.
Mhm.
And so he now has an eye patch, and things are not really going his way. Again, he's lost his daughter, a lot of his friends. He's having a really rough time. And we see a member of the JSA, who is, of course, Michael, who is making little ghosts for the kids to chase. And we see the two of them sit down to talk. So here, Courtney got into one of the best private schools in the country. Says, yeah, I think she's a little apprehensive about it. Alan, of course, says she'll do fine. Michael says, we've been missing you old timers at the brownstone. Seems like the only place I see you and Jay and Ted is at the memorial services. He asks how Todd is. Todd is, of course, Alan's son, who is Jenny Lynn's twin brother. He says he's doing better. He misses Jenny Lynn. Alan says, so do I. Says, you've been following the news about Checkmate? He says, I know the president closed them down and the UN wants to start them back up. Alan has been asked by the Security Council to head the new version. They want him to be the White King. He says, I told them I'd do it on one condition, that the smartest man I know advised me as the White King's bishop. He says, why? He says, White Checkmate, you mean? Because someone needs to keep an eye on the little things before they turn into big ones. Things like Lex Luthor's metagene program. Things like this new Infinity Inc.
And before anybody asks to who he's talking to, is like we said, is Michael, which if anybody does not know is Mr. Terrific. So
sorry, I forgot that not everyone knows that.
But yeah, so we go to day 4.
Yes, so we are back at Oolong Island, which if you remember where all of those mad scientists went, here it is. And Morrow says, you're making me look bad, Will. I didn't have to bring you here, you know. Will's like, I didn't ask to be brought here. He says, I'm not some crackpot megalomaniac with a grudge against society. Professor Morrow, I will not build a plutonium robot for Intergang. And Morrow says, you did it once before for the government. So let me assure you, Will, before this year is out, Intergang will be the government. So quite frankly, there is no functional difference. I was like, I'd lost my mind. Plutonium was all my depression and rage given form. And he shakes his bottle of pills at Morrow and says, why do you think I have to take these? Morrow says, I hadn't quite realized you were taking them to kill your creativity, Will. That's very interesting. But then we see Mannheim come to the island. And we see Chang Tzu, who is this giant egg thing in like a robotic suit. Weapons so terrible, only one name seemed suitable. We call them the Four Horsemen, and that's what we have sort of learned that these scientists are trying to create. And that ends this week's issue. But we do now have the origin of Nightwing. So I'm going to pass this over to Brandon because I don't touch the bats.
But I do, because Nightwing's one of my favorite Bat family members. Of course, for anybody who does not know, this is Dick Grayson. This is the very first Robin ever in comics whatsoever. Of course, his story starts off at Haley's Circus, where he was part of his family's dynamic trapeze artists called the Flying Graysons. And it took one incident, of course, because Haley Circus decided that they didn't need the mob's protection, so they would never pay them. Well, in the process of doing this, the Flying Graysons are murdered during a circus performance with, guess who in the audience? Bruce Wayne himself. As everybody is traumatized, everything they just saw, Bruce comes to relate to Dick Grayson. And the fact being that Bruce understands his story, pretty much Bruce brings him in under his wing as the first Robin. Now, it states, as Robin, the laughing young daredevil thrived under Batman's guidance, becoming an expert crime fighter in his own right. And as all boys must, he eventually grew up and flew from the nest. Having left the Robin identity behind, Dick Grayson, acrobat, detective, adventurer, patrols the streets of New York City as Nightwing. And I love that panel where you see him as Robin. You get the disco wing Nightwing, and then you get the new outfit, Nightwing. If you don't know, fans, what disco wing Nightwing is, you're missing out. At this point,
It
this
is his best suit. Also have to say, as all as all boys must eventually, he grew up and flew from this. That's a very interesting way of saying he got kicked out.
yeah, yeah.
But what do I expect from DC Comics, right? Can never actually acknowledge the terrible things Bruce does.
Hey, we got to give some credit to Mark Waid for writing this. But what I love too, before I finish the story, is who drew this section. This is George Perez. And if anybody does not know who George Perez is, rest in peace, George. He is probably one of the best comic book artists of all time. And he is the one responsible for pretty much drawing Dick Grayson's first appearance as Nightwing in Tales of the New Teen Titans. Him and Mark Wolfman created this team of new heroes that we all can love and create. Now, granted, it's not the first Teen Titans appearance, but this is what popularized a lot more. But to finish the story off, it states, unlike his former mentor, however, Nightwing enters each and every fight with looming uncertainty. Grave celestial forces beyond our ken have informed him that his survival in the multiverse's recent crisis was neither expected nor foretold, and that his ultimate fate is yet to be determined. Now, powers and weapons, he is the world's greatest acrobat. Nightwing is a master of combat styles. His bulletproof costume contains a number of hidden utility belt devices, chief among them a grappling line, stylized shurikens, a shatterproof eskrima fighting sticks for close quarters battle. Even as a boy, Nightwing was uncommonly bright and mature of his age, and his ability to read people makes him not only an amazing detective, but a team leader without equal. A trait not even his famed mentor shares. I give Mark Waid props on that line because I do think Nightwing's a better leader compared to Bruce. Now, some of his essential storylines. Of course, it's Detective Comics 38, which is his very first appearance in comics. Robin Year One, which is a great story if you want to really learn Robin's first night on his own. I love this story really well. Nightwing Year One, and Teen Titans, the Judas Contract. And of course, his alliances, other than this is where I got a little upset because they did put Outsiders, which I know is his team at this point in time, but he's also a Titans. He's also Teen Titans. There's so many other teams he's been a part of.
Okay, but like, how many times does Roy Harper make a team specifically for someone?
Got a point. Got a point. But this does end this week's issue of 52. And as always, if you like this content, you want more of it, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit that bell notification so you never miss an episode. Tell us what you think about this issue. Also, let us know what you think about the Black Marvel family. What do you think about Ralph's storyline going on right now? I'm learning about the story and backstory of Felix Faust. Also, let us know what you think about Infinity Inc.'s new member. As always, you can check this out on YouTube exclusively. But if you want other great comic book and anime content, you want to hear Mary's and mine voices more on different podcasts, please go check us out on Spotify for podcasters, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, so many other platforms to listen to great comic book and anime content. As always, check us out also on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram at Comic Talkers to get all the latest updates on the podcast. And without further ado, my name is Brandon.
And I'm Mary.
And may comics always be the top of your discussion.